Welcome to the Amateur Church Podcast, where we pursue excellence in ministry with the right motivation for the sake of love. I'm Pastor Matt, and I'm so thankful that you are on this disciples journey with me. This week we've been reading through 1 Kings, and today we're going to look at how do we worship based on the text, the book, 1 Kings. And to help me out with our worship podcast, we've got my partner in crime, Brother
Yes,
Terrell
indeed.
Boger. Terrell, good to see you today.
Always a joy to be here. Thank you.
So as we've been reading through 1 Kings, brother, just kind of give me a little bit of response from your reading. What have you seen and what has hit home with you this week?
One of the things, it starts out with the death of David, and then we go to Solomon. And when you see these people, they're not the heroes of the Bible, but they're called a great men of faith. You even hear David be called a great man of integrity. And if these men that are so looked up to fail as bad as they did, and God still counts them as righteous, then there's still hope for me.
Definitely. Well, what in the book of 1 Kings we see some really dumb decisions made.
Yes.
And that's in the life of Solomon with the many wives, 700 wives, 300 concubines.
Yeah.
We see Rehoboam make some foolish decisions.
Right.
We see Ahab make some foolish decisions. Even in the life of Elijah, some decisions that could be seen as foolish simply because of his own discouragement and depression. What are some of these things that you've seen where they've really blown it, and how can we build these guards or boundaries in our lives to keep from that?
One of the first things I thought of is when I was reading the story, and he's talking about going. Rehoboam was talking about going to the elders. Elders told him some great advice, and what does he do? Nah, I'm listening to these younger guys. And let me tell you, that's always a good piece of advice. Go to the people that haven't been there before. Yeah, good job.
I hope you can sense the sarcasm
Yes, please.
in this room. That's kind of the picture I get with Rehoboam, listening to the elders, to the ones who've
Yes.
been through it, and then him totally rejecting.
Nope.
And he goes to his frat brothers and says, "Hey guys, what do you think I should do?"
Good job.
And they say, tighten up. And have there been times in your life where it was actually, I think, one of the devotion questions on Tuesday, where you didn't listen to wise advice and you regret that?
I can think of a few times, and won't get into the details of that. But yeah, I've looked back and I said, I should have done that. And my brother, as we've grown older and we have traded stories, he has told me many times, next time, why don't you come to me with that so I can teach you and you can learn from my mistake.
Yeah, definitely. I know even as starting out as a young pastor, and I still don't know what I'm doing, but starting out, if I could go back
Oh, yeah.
and change some decisions, I definitely would, because felt the influence or maybe the pressure to listen to certain individuals that they had no idea what they were talking about.
Right.
And I followed their advice, and then I totally messed up situations. And that's just part of the maturing process. Yeah. But can you imagine Rehoboam leading an entire nation and just blowing it
right.
completely? And so that's one of the things I found interesting. As we look at 1 Kings, we see a guy by the name of Elijah, a prophet, willing to stand against the evil Ahab, wicked Ahab, but willing to stand in the midst of political pressure. When we talk about worship, many people think worship is just the songs that we sing,
right.
but most often worship is living our lives in the midst of a pagan culture.
Yes.
How does that play into even your responsibilities as a worship leader?
Well, we always say that our first responsibility is to our home. And one thing I always tell my son as he's getting older, we kind of look to, and I'll kind of force him to listen to the news sometimes when we're in the car together. And I'll say, Daniel, can you hear this, what they're saying? What you hear is they're chasing their truth. And it changes with the seasons. Next year, their truth may be a little bit different. And it becomes harder to follow and chase down a worldly truth. And I said, The thing with the Bible, Daniel, is this truth has been the same since the beginning of time. It does not change. And it's so much easier when you're following something that does not change and does not move. You know where your priorities are, you know where your standards are. And a year from now, 10 years from now, at the end of your life, when you look back, it'll still be in the same place. And it's so much easier to follow God's truth than the world's truth because it doesn't change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Well, brother, in your reading, I know you've got a song prepared for this week. Tell me about the song and tell me kind of why that jumped out to you.
It came about when we were reading. Let me turn to it real quick so I can give you the right place. When we were reading and I'm sitting here losing my place. There it is, chapter 9. Mm-hmm. And God tells us, or God tells Solomon, as for you, if you walk before me as your father David walked in integrity, and he goes on and says, I will do these things, but if you or your son shall indeed turn away. And I love that phrase. It's in the Bible a lot, but if, or I think you preached on it at one of the Baptist meetings, but Barnabas, and we have thanks to Paul in Psalm 3, David is worried about all these people coming against him, but thou, O Lord. And I love that term, that little word in there, but, and then it says something else. And it says, but if you turn from me, and we see just in a few chapters later, what does Solomon do? The one thing he was told not to do. Yeah. And it doesn't turn out right. And the song that jumped out at me is all these people just kept messing up. God just wants one thing from us. He wants our faithfulness. He wants us to be holy, and he wants us to be righteous. And that's the one thing he has. And I love reading these stories because these people fail because they're human. I fail because I'm human. But if I get back up again and say, okay, God, here's where I messed up. I'm confessing this to you. Thank you for your forgiveness. You know, we're always faithful. Even though we mess up, we're still faithful. We still are called to be faithful.
Awesome.
So this song is, if you're like me and a child of the 90s, you remember it from the album Sonic Flood. And it's a song called Take My Life. It also goes by the name Holiness. So if you know this song, let's all sing it together. Holiness is what I long for. What I need. Holiness is what you want from me. Faithfulness is what I long for. Faithfulness is what I need. Faithfulness is what you want from me. So take my heart and form it. Take my mind, transform it. Take my will, conform it. To yours, O Lord. Righteousness is what I long for. Righteousness is what I need. Righteousness is what you want from me. So take my heart and form it. Take my mind, transform it. Take my will, conform it to yours, oh Lord. To yours, oh Lord. To yours, oh
Lord. It brought back my 90s love for music.
Indeed.
Wow. As we look at 1 Kings, we see Elijah rising up and really, I would call it a worship service on Mount Carmel. where 450 prophets of Baal, 400 prophets of the Asherah, he kind of wages war in worship with them, and it's this picture. Even I referred to it back for Resurrection Sunday. That picture of him engaging in this. Do you believe that worship can actually be war sometimes?
I believe so, and I've heard a lot of pastors talk about that. Like, if you could see the spiritual realm of what's going on right now, you would be amazed. In fact, not to get too spiritual, this past Easter, I felt just something stop me in my tracks. And if y'all seen the service, I got lost. I think I was just so overwhelmed with what was going on and what was being sung and what we were celebrating that day that I was just kind of stuck and in awe for a moment. And in my mind, I was playing it back. It felt like I was up there for about 5 minutes, just in awe. When you go back and look at the tape, it's like 5 seconds. But it's something just hit me of, wow, this is amazing.
So how do you, when you're mentioning that, how do you lead in preparation for corporate worship with that in mind, that what we're doing is we're not just singing,
right?
And there is adoration, but we're actually preparing people for spiritual warfare,
right?
Walk me through that process of your of even picking out songs, but how you prepare yourself, and then how you prepare us for worship.
Like we do in staff meeting, months ahead of time, I kind of know where you're going, and as we get closer, we kind of can narrow the picture. But I always want to have one song that kind of takes us to the text. Is here's what we're talking about today, and a song that really kind of drives home that point of, if we're talking about forgiveness, we need to sing about forgiveness, or if we're talking about grace, we need to sing about grace. There's always going to be a song about the cross, or something that mentions every Sunday. It's Resurrection Sunday. So we're going to talk about our God is not dead. He is alive. And then maybe there's something new I'm trying to teach through songs. But one thing I look at is, and I think I said this a few weeks ago, if I took away the Bible, or if the Bible was taken away, would we have enough Bible through the songs that we sing? Are we getting a accurate picture of who God is through what we sing? So I look at the story, and each week I look through, and I'm like, okay, what's the story we're telling? And I don't say story meaning fiction, but what is, because I consider myself a preacher. I just do it through a different medium this time. You do it through oration, I do it through singing. So I prepare myself by, one, what is the congregation saying? Is it true? Is it something that when they leave and Monday through Saturday, do they have something that they can come back on and go, I'm going through this, but we sang this on Sunday. And maybe a song comes back to them that helps them through a situation or drives them to the Bible and gets them to read. And then for my own, I make sure that I worship myself. And again, hear that the right way. I'm not worshiping me. God knows that's not the right way to go. But I myself take time to worship and make sure that whatever I'm dealing with it, God and I have worked that out before I get up on stage.
That's great insight, because some people, they'll look at us and say, man, they just get up there for an hour a week, and they're just singing, or they're just just preaching. There's nothing to it, but there's a lot of preparation that goes into that.
I remember growing up looking at, I'm thinking about the staff I had growing up at the churches I've been to, and it's like, man, they've got it all together. And now that I've become staff and I've known those guys better, no, we don't. But we have a God that helps us keep it together.
And well, thank you so much for your insight. I love the book of 1 Kings because it shows us the responsibility of leadership. That's a key point. And in the midst of failures, God is still on his throne.
Oh, yeah.
And so love that. Well, as we close out our podcast episode for today, we want to look at this, hey, check this out moment. What's your resource of the week, brother?
A lot of times, me, I'm going to point you to some different styles of music. I love just good music. When people ask me what music do you like, I say good. I like good music. But this is something that we did in seminary. It's a classical piece, or actually romantic, but it's by Felix Mendelssohn. If you know him, he's a classical composer. And he wrote an oratorio, which is just a famous way of saying a music with songs, chorus, and soloist. But it's called Elijah, and it picks up in Kings when he's pronouncing the drought. So it picks up there and it goes through 2 Kings. And one of my favorite parts is towards the middle when we were just talking about when he gets up there and he's calling out the prophets of Baal, call him louder, call him louder. But it's just a nice musical journey through the life of Elijah. And I love it when they say, maybe he's on a journey. And we all know where he might be at that time. But if you've never heard it, go listen to Felix Mendelssohn's oratorio called Elijah.
And that's awesome. I have never heard it. And so I'm going to take time this week to listen
Yes.
and be spiritually encouraged by that. Talking about Elijah, it's really interesting to see the spiritual victory and then the spiritual defeat in his life. And I shared that for Elijah, his greatest battle was not necessarily at Mount Carmel. It was his own depression and discouragement. And many times our greatest battle is not the outside forces, but our inward depression. And so my resource of the week, my hey, check this out moment, is actually a book that I just finished reading. When I was on vacation, I took it and read it. And I think I've mentioned it before, but the book is called Margin. And it's by Richard Swenson, a medical doctor. And the little tagline is Margin, restoring emotional, physical, financial, and time reserves to overloaded lives.
Oh, wow.
And that would be, if there's been one book this year, and we're 4 months into this year now, I've read several books, probably about 7 or 8 since January. And the one book that has made a huge difference in my life is this book, Margin. And I encourage everyone to, especially Christian listeners, to read that book. Now, there are some things that he will take to an extreme that I don't necessarily think we need to practice that or adopt those practices. But his whole point is that we need to build margin in our lives, not to be overloaded. And so I would encourage that as a resource, especially for ministers. Much like Elijah, we can get defeated and discouraged and depressed, and we need those times of refreshing for us. So, well, brother, any last words?
Well, other than right now, I'm putting that on my wish list as we speak. I want to check that book out.
Good deal.
Just the one thing I want to remind everybody that failure is a part of the process. As long as you continue to get back up and take that next step and follow what God has and just chase after Him.
Amen. Thank you, brother. And thank you for listening this week as we've walked through 1 Kings. Get ready for next week. We walk through the book of 2 Kings. I love you. I'm praying for you. Stakes in the ground.